What's up, guys? Welcome back to Spark to Fire. I'm your host, Landon Rhodes, and today we've got a special edition of Spark to Fire. I've got my father-in-law, Swanson, in the studio.
Hey, Landon.
How you doing, sir?
So good.
Good. We're going to be talking about something that's really important. It's not so much business related, but it is family related and life related, and it is interwoven into the very fabric of our society, and that's school board. So you are actually running for school board. And before we talk anything about that, though, I want to give people an idea of who are you, who is Swanson. So tell us a little bit about your bio, a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there.
Okay. I'd say I'm born and raised in Millard, which is the biggest suburb of Omaha, Nebraska. Millard Public Schools is where I got my high school education. I was in the very first graduating class of Millard North High School in 1985. Your wife, my daughter Megan, and my other two children all graduated from Millard North, and now we have grandchildren that will be going to Millard North. And what stirred my heart, Landon, was I was just thinking about it's my time to serve. You know, as empty nesters, now we have the time, we have the finances, the resources to be able to serve our community in a new way.
Yeah.
And I know it's cliche, but the saying really is true, Landon, that all politics are local. And what I mean by that is school board is literally the last thing on the ballot, Landon. It's the very last thing. So I look at that and say, how can we help provide an excellent public school education for our grandchildren and for the generations to come? And who better than a product of the Millard school system to do it? That's why I'm spending all this time, all this money, walking all these miles, meeting people, Landon, because it's for literally the next generation. So it's important to me, and because there's an open seat on the board, I decided over a year ago to jump in and just go for it.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm running. A little bit about me, just like I said, born and raised in Omaha. I've been a financial planner for 21 years, so I always joke in my campaign events, Landon, that I actually know how to do math. So when it comes to budget time, and we'll talk more about that, I know how to look at a budget. I know how, as a business owner, to trim expenses and be mindful of that. I like to think I'm a good steward of the taxpayer dollars, and just love talking to people. So in that way, Landon, I'm a lot like you. I never meet a stranger, because once we get talking, we're going to have something in common and have the ability to connect in some way.
That's awesome. And so and this is not a high-paying position.
Oh, yes. It pays $0.
$0
Yep.
and 0 cents.
And it takes about 10 hours a week to do a good job on the board. So I knew that, eyes wide open, walking in, it was going to be something that if I was going to do it, I'm planning on winning, and I'm planning on doing a tremendous job. Also, I don't know if I shared this with you or not, but I'm planning on being on the board for 20 years. I'm planning on seeing my grandchildren through their high school education so they know that grandpa's on the board.
That's right. Yep. That's big. That's big for me too, because that's happens to be exactly where we live now.
Exactly.
So,
Yep.
Yeah. And as somebody that doesn't have kids yet, but absolutely plans to have kids, I think that's really important that they have somewhere that they can go to school, not only get an education, make friends, but they're not infused or indoctrinated with any of the political crap that has found its way into our school systems. And we'll talk more about that, but I have some questions that I wanted to ask. So I'm going to pull out my
fire away. Let's go.
My fancy device here. And so you already covered why you're running, which I love this. You know, you don't have to do this. You have a lot of things you could be doing with your time, but you're specifically setting time aside so that you can give back to this community, because you guys have been here. You were the first graduating class, right?
Yep. In Millard North. Yeah. Back in 1985, before you were born, Landon.
Yes.
So, yes.
Yep, just a little bit. So, this is something that it is a very selfless act in the nature of running for any public office without any pay whatsoever. You are giving of your most valuable asset, time. So, we know why you're running, which I appreciate. What are you hearing? You mentioned something about like talking to people door to door. So like, how many people have you talked to, and like, what are they saying? What does a common folk of Millard think right now of the current status of schools?
It's a great question. So to answer your question, I personally have knocked over 2,000 doors. And what I mean by that is to get the word out, even for something like a school board, you have to introduce yourself. I'm a first-time candidate. Nobody knows in Millard who Swanson is. And so to do that, you bring a piece of literature that literally has the ability to hang on the door. It has a little hole in it. So if they're not home and they've got an old-fashioned doorknob, which practically nobody has
anymore, yeah.
Yes. You either fold it up in the normal handle or you put it on there. But when they do come to the door, and we do a lot of door knocking on Saturdays and Sundays, some evenings, then you have a chance to give your elevator pitch, which you're well aware of as a business owner. You have basically 10 seconds to tell someone why they should even remotely think about voting for him. And what I tell them is, hey, John, my name is Sean Swanson. I'm part of a 4-generation Millard family. I went to Millard North, so did my kids, and now my grandkids are going to Millard North. I'm running for the open seat on the Millard School Board, and I want to keep Millard awesome. I'd appreciate your vote in November. So I think that's 12 seconds, but here's what I hear. Typically, if we have these phone applications, Landon, that tell us the political leanings, and I don't want to make this political today. We know kind of where their background is. So for one type that maybe is on the same team that I am, I kind of don't have to go into too many of the issues. I just identify, hey, we share some of the same values, and they're like, I'll vote for you. For folks that maybe, but for everybody else, I'm dumb enough, Landon, I talk to every single door. I knock on every door. Right. I don't care what their background is. And all I do is I add one more question to say, Mr. Smith, what is most important to you? And then I shut up and listen. Here is what I'm hearing. Don't indoctrinate my kids, period. And so that's been a long-standing thing in my elevator pitch, is just to say, hey, we all care about kids. And the job of the schools is to educate, not indoctrinate. And I always point out, that's to not indoctrinate either left or right.
Right. This isn't about making a bunch of mini Trump fans either.
Right.
This is about keeping it just
keeping it right down the middle. Yeah. Because teachers, as I've talked to teachers at the door as well, they feel overwhelmed. And if we add more and more things that they're supposed to do that are anything apart from teaching what they're paid to do, it just makes it more complicated. So anything with politicization of our kids, and also a very big issue is transparency. Landon, parents want to know what their kids are being taught. And, COVID was terrible, but if there's maybe one silver lining in the whole thing, it's that more parents across America woke up when they saw via the Zoom link what their kids were being taught. Yeah. There were a lot of parents, again, across the political spectrum that said, whoa, Nelly, no, that's not what I signed up for. I do not want little Timmy and little Susie being subjected to this stuff, whether it be politicization, or even talking about gender. Just the whole idea of fluid gender to a 6-year-old who can barely, is barely learning to read. So just keeping it simple, keeping our schools awesome. And I would say the other one that I hear is a lot of people don't realize that in our district, much like many other Nebraska districts, over 60% of the voters don't have kids in the district. And yet they're paying the same property taxes that everybody else is. So being a math guy, I love having that conversation about how we can address taxation in Nebraska so we don't keep losing people, both young and old, fleeing the state because they can't handle the tax pressures.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Why does this matter to the rest of the state of Nebraska? Why is Millard so important, and why is this such a pivotal election?
That's a great question as well. So Millard's the 3rd largest school district in the state, behind OPS, Omaha Public Schools, and actually we're really close to being the same size as Lincoln. So Millard, as the 3rd largest school district, has been a bellwether for the last 50 years. Let me give you a couple of examples. Number one, which I'm really proud of, Millard has always been either number 1, 2, or 3 in the lowest cost per student, while maintaining some of the highest academic results of any district in the state. We've also been leaders in working with the state legislature in Lincoln to figure out how to try and solve the tax problem. So through the years, Millard's always been very vocal in educating legislators on what's broken and what works in the system. And then finally, I'll just go back to that academic excellence. So, being married to my daughter, that we were really blessed that myself and all three of my kids were able to take advanced placement courses through high school. And all of us walked into college with several college credits already done.
I was pretty jealous of that. She's like, yeah, I finished in 4 years, should have taken 5. I was like, finished in 5, should have taken 3.5.
Yeah. But I mean, that's something that maybe could be taken for granted, but it was actually a deciding vote for why my wife, Julie, and I, all those years ago, decided to send our 3 children through public schools. We had an option. We could have made it work to send them to private schools. We could have even homeschooled them even back then.
Right.
But for the reasons of academics and also all the extracurricular activities, like all the music programs, basketball and everything.
They were just a little bit involved.
Just a little bit.
They did a few things.
They did a few things.
A lot of things.
So to wrap it up, people around the state maybe should care about that, because Millard has been a leader. And what Millard tends to do, it does have an impact on not only the 2 big metro areas, but a lot of impact on even the smaller school districts across the state. Not perfect, certainly, but a big influencer.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure taking all of this on, you have a career, you've got a family, you've got all of your friendships, everything. You have everything you're trying to juggle in your life. And now you add becoming a candidate for school board to this.
Yeah.
So what have you learned becoming a first-time candidate for anything in public office, let alone school board?
Landon, just like your business owning experience, the answer is a ton.
Yeah.
Just like when you opened your business, they did not hand me a manual when I decided and raised my hand.
Right.
And I know you know the story, but if anybody's watching this, really what happened was in October of last year, Pastor Doug at our church gave a message. And in the middle of the message, I really felt like the good Lord above convicted my heart. And of course, I didn't hear the audible word of the Lord, but I just heard in my knowing, dude, you got to run for school board. And it hit me so hard that I actually fell back in my seat, and I turned to my wife and said, I got to run for school board, just like that.
I remember. I was there.
I was like,
this is crazy.
Blank look. And what did my wife, Julie, say? She thought for exactly 1 second, and she said, I'm all in.
So your exact words were, I don't think if you remember me saying this, or you remember saying this to me, but you're like, yeah, the Lord just hit me over the head with a frying pan today.
Oh, yes, it was.
Apparently,
like
I got to run for school board.
Yes, apparently. I did say it that way. You're right. So
you're like, I'm going to run for school board. And I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
And I kind of didn't, I was just like, oh, awesome, Sean. And then the next day we had you guys had a meeting about it. It's like, oh, we're really doing this, aren't
Yes.
we? Okay, great.
Yes,
So
and
that's
I
awesome.
can't thank you and Megan enough, and the rest of our friends that have come.
This is good.
So what I've learned is I think it was probably pretty good judgment that with school boards in our Millard School Board, no one ever beats an incumbent. So one of the reasons why I ran is because I knew that a wonderful man was stepping off the school board after serving for 16 years. And that gentleman, by his own volition, out of his own mouth, is a bit of a centrist. He would vote one way, another way. So that opened up an opportunity to be able to have a shot. If I was willing to do the work, I could have a shot at taking that spot. But what I learned is everything from who you got to talk to, how much money you have to raise, how many doors you personally as the candidate have to knock on, how to build an organization, even technical things like how to teach people how to use the phone application when you go door knocking. And it is like running a business, in that you raise the money and then you have your budget about, hey, I've got to buy 10,000 mail pieces. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. And then finally, just learning how to hone the message into sound bites, kind of like we're doing today, is trying to just educate the public about where we stand on the issues and why they should care about this race. So I've learned a ton. And in fact, Landon, I don't know if you know this, but one of the commitments I made is that after we get elected November 8th, I am actually going to make a manual out of this. I'm going to do my best. That I know that there's another seat coming open in 2 years. Why would I not take the time to educate the next wonderful candidate that wants to raise their hand and try to give them 80% of what they know rather than going from 0%?
So true. Yeah, business owners know this. When you start your business, there's no manual. There's no one standing there saying, this is your first step. here's your next step. It doesn't work like that. It's you fumbling around in the dark like without a flashlight, and
Exactly.
then you stumble upon it. So awesome. So we covered a lot of really good ground here. I want to go into a little bit more of the harder issues, and not so much hard for you, I would say, but the stuff that's really controversial. The reason I think behind the reason of you running is there's a lot of things that are really threatening becoming indoctrinated into our kids,
Yes.
and our future kids.
You're absolutely right, Landon.
And so I want to talk about your stance on CRT, SEL, and the Castle framework.
So we're going to teach people all the letters today.
All
Is that
the
what we're doing?
acronyms. Let's hear them.
We're going
and
back
why
to
you're-
first
and-
grade with Landon. We're going to
That's
teach
right.
letter soup. Okay,
Yep,
well,
you got it.
let's take the first one. And of course, Landon, you were there, but last Tuesday night we had a community forum. And when the moderator said CRT, I just stood up. I didn't wait to get called on.
Literally, they were in line, and they were going 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it was 2, 3, 4, 1, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna talk about critical race theory, or it was just like CRT, and Sean literally just like, I'm up, okay, yeah.
I just
Here we go.
inserted myself because I'm so passionate about it, and so let me break it down. So CRT, here's why you should care. If you're listening to my voice and you think racism is wrong, then you should be against CRT. I could end it right there, and we could avoid a lot of stuff. I don't care what color you are, red, yellow, brown, green. CRT at its core stands for critical race theory, and hilariously has been repackaged in the last year as CRT, culturally relevant teaching. Repackaged probably again next year, but we have to keep our eyes open. So critical race theory at its core, I'm going to make up a new species of people called the green people.
The green people.
Okay? The green people. They're not even from Mars.
From
They're
planet
green.
Zorb.
Okay? So in this new critical race theory that Landon and I just invented, if you were born with green skin, then you are inherently the oppressor. Most of the world's problems are your fault because the pigment of your skin is green. The critical race theory also claims that because you have green skin, you inherently have other advantages that other people don't have because of your skin color. It goes all the way down in a practical sense to people of green skin in schools of all ages should be separated, Landon, into a separate room. I'm not making this up.
This is real.
This is
literally
real.
written in
Separated
there.
into another room and given training by people that don't have green skin, that have any other skin, because they're experts on why you are the oppressor, little Timmy, the 7-year-old person with green skin, and how you should live in shame as an oppressor because you have inherently all of these things. Now, anybody that has, let's make up another one, orange skin people, okay? So if you were born with orange skin, then according to critical race theory, you are a victim. I mean, because you have orange skin, automatically you've been given a different lot in life, and your orange skin causes you to be a victim. So you're indoctrinated into thinking that who should you blame, in fact, for all of your problems? Well, it would be the green people. Because, of course, they're the oppressors and you're the victims. Well, I'm kind of making light of this because it's so ridiculous, but it is prevalent across America. And I'm ashamed to say this, it is even present in Millard Public Schools. Now, I know some of my opponents will say it's not, it's never been there. But the fact of the matter is I've been going to school board meetings for 13 months now. And about every month, there's an example of a person that a parent comes forth and says, this actually happened. So it's something that we need to really be on guard against. And let me end with this. Critical race theory is illegal according to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, Title II, Section 202, which specifically prohibits public schools from separating people based on race. And if you want a history lesson on that, go look up that whole thing. But there are many, many people that fought very hard for that to get passed. And in my mind, if we go back to critical race theory, we're literally setting the clock back over 50 years.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and it shouldn't be something that is being indoctrinated into kids, because they're whatever acronym it is, whether it's CRT, SEL, the Castle framework, Common Core, all of it's the same. It just keeps getting repackaged and represented, because that's what you do, by the way, in advertising and indoctrination.
Really?
Is you if something is gotten old or is not, it's not packaged in a proper way, what they will do is like in advertising and in marketing, they will literally put they call it a wrapper, put a new wrapper on the outside of it, reframe it so it is viewed as something new. And so when something is new, it causes people to be like, oh yeah, we have to have that. That's new. That's progressive. That's us.
Yeah.
And when something is old or it is not as common, not as something that you want to keep doing, they'll literally repackage it and it will become something new.
Gotcha.
But the exact same tenants in the same product, literally like product, like cereal box, right?
Yep.
Product is inside.
Wow.
But they just repackage it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they're doing with these acronyms and this language is they're trying to get it past people because it is literally evil.
Yes, it's very controversial. And you brought up SEL, that just to keep it simpler, that stands for social emotional learning. And it actually is grounded in something that's just totally fine. Social emotional learning at its core could be something as simple as learning social cues and not acting inappropriately. But what it has morphed into is something that we see not only in the schools, but in corporations. I'm not making this up. This is getting at you must think the right way. So this would be you do not have a wokeness score of 100 because you don't agree with the person giving the survey in every single area. Mm-hmm. It's why corporations across America that, in my opinion, have gone woke are hiring people to come in and teach woke classes on you must think this way. And if we think about it, America was not built on those values. America was built on free speech, and the solution, if you don't like someone's free speech, is more free speech. If you want to make an argument to me, base it on facts, keep your cool, and make a great argument for it.
Yeah.
But if I disagree with you and then get all emotional and take all my toys and go home, that's not what America's built on.
Nothing gets solved.
Yeah, so I don't have any problem with someone having a different opinion about something, but I do have a problem with someone forcing on my grandchildren, you must think a certain way. And that's really a simplified expression of what SEL and the Castle framework, CASEL, is.
Yeah, again, all the acronyms, different packaging, same trash, same information. So another acronym that is not so fun is CSE. What is this? Why do parents need to know about it? By the way, this isn't, and this is why this is on the show, by the way, is that this isn't just going to apply to Millard.
Right.
Like this isn't just going to apply to Omaha.
No.
This is going to be in your city. So the people that listen to this show are leaders. You're leaders in your community, whether you're in Colorado, whether you're in Iowa, wherever you are.
Yep.
Small town Nebraska. It will eventually reach its way out there. So that's why, by the way, put a quick bullet on this is like why we're sharing this with everybody, because people need to know that this stuff exists so that they can actively vote against it.
Yeah.
So what is CSE and like what does it mean to my community?
I love what you just said. That's the why. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for including this on this wonderful podcast because we just want to educate people. So CSE, Landon, stands for Comprehensive Sexual Education. Middle word emphasized on purpose. Okay, so many of us that are looking at this, we had sex ed. You watched the film in 5th grade, then you had that awkward talk in 8th grade. I get it. That's approved. Also, even back when I went to school, if my parents wanted to opt me out of that, they absolutely could.
They could.
Okay? Now, in fact, my parents did opt me out of that because I had the birds and bees talk with my dad, which I thought went really well. Yeah. And he had it when I could comprehend it and when it was at the right time. Comprehensive sexual education, Landon, is nothing like that. When I say comprehensive sexual education, in my opinion, the reason why it lights me up like a Christmas tree as a grandfather is that, in my opinion, it's grooming children for sexual predators. Yes, I said that. It's grooming children for sexual predators. I'm going to keep it G-rated, so if I use code language right here, son-in-law, it's because I want more people to see this.
We've had worse on.
Yes. So one example of CSE would be teaching pronouns to 6-year-olds. So having a 6-year-old fill out a worksheet that said you could be a he, you could be a she, a they, or any other number of always changing pronouns.
Right.
Separating gender from what your human construction is, if I could say that, your parts. But also surveying kids without the parents' consent, and then using that data to be able to build a database that is just pure evil. So this not only pervades to the gender thing, but it also very much is people that maybe have a different way of looking at their sexuality, if I could put it that way, wanting more people to adopt that way of thinking at the youngest possible age to normalize all those behaviors. I think I'll leave that one there because your listeners can probably figure out what I'm saying. But I'm patently against that. I have no problem with what somebody does in their own home, no problem at all. But when it comes to a public school education, when you look at these materials, they're, in my opinion, positively evil, and they're very agenda-driven. And somebody that wants to disagree with me, I will have a lovely conversation with you as long as we base it on facts. So that's why I'm pretty patently against CSE, Landon.
You're patently against CSE, CRT, SEL, the Castle Framework. And I think people need to know that, you know, if you've been listening to the show, you know my values. You know, we're both like very, very real Christians, like church on Sunday,
Yep.
love God, love including God in our decisions every single day.
Yep.
And as I've grown in that faith, by being around you guys and specifically being around your daughter, it's just, this stuff hurts even more when you start to understand the biblical pretext of like why this is so horrible for
Exactly.
kids.
That's right.
Like they should not be indoctrinated. They should not know or even have to worry about this at
Yep.
age 6.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
it shouldn't even be like coming across their radar. And it's unfortunate. The unfortunate fact is that, and why I think that you're fighting so hard against it, is something called the law of first mention. So talk to us about that, because you were actually one of the first people to talk to me about the law of first mention itself.
Yeah. So the first time you hear about a person or a concept, you get an immediate reaction that is like seared into your heart. Mm-hmm. And so, for instance, I mean, just going to use my silly example again, okay? If little Landon comes along and I'm his grandfather and he's 6 years old and we see a green person and Grandpa says, green people are mean. Well, that's searing into my grandson this first impression from someone he respects. Mm-hmm. Think about how evil that could be. That's where just flat out racism comes, sexism, all those kind of hurtful things that are true, very, very non-biblical, but even apart from the Bible, they're just not good for society.
Right.
So with the law of first mention, it's important that, back to the public school setting, we need to be teaching kids at an age-appropriate level. And it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel. We've been teaching these things for years and years, and that's a big thing that I'm fighting against. I also just want to say I am for so many more things that I'm against. I mean, I hate it when people try to put me in a box that, well, that Sean, all he talks about is what he's against. No. The slogan of my campaign, as you know, is Keep Millard Awesome, which was chosen on purpose as a product of the school system. I just want us to keep on doing the things that have been successful. We don't need to change wholesale everything about our education. Just like you said, just because there's something new, that doesn't mean that it's better. So it's important that we, as grown-ups, put our big boy and big girl pants on, and we're responsible. We educate ourselves about what our kids are being educated with, and we stand up. And here's what I've noticed. People want someone to stand up.
Yeah.
Okay. At that Tuesday forum, there were cheers and applause most when we were in these controversial issues, and we clearly and plainly stated where we stand. There were standing ovations and applause. Absolutely. And loud yells. So I don't do it for the praise of man, but it was certainly encouraging to hear that there's so many other people that feel the same way.
Yeah. And yeah, that's a really important thing to understand. This isn't a power trip. This isn't for what someone thinks about you or to get some sort of status.
No.
This literally takes time and pays nothing.
Right.
It is by definition the opposite of those things. And for someone to be so selfless and take their time for the people that can't give up that time, because there's people that don't have the privilege of giving up that time.
Right.
They're not in that stage of their life. They don't have the income. They don't have the time management ability to give their time to go do something like this, but they have the same values as we do.
Yeah.
And so I think this is really important to hit too, is like, you were one of the biggest supporters of teachers. Like, you want teachers to have all the resources and to be able to like really take care of kids. And so I would just like love for you to like talk a little bit about that. We talked about some negative things. We talked about some things that we don't want in the schools, but there's a lot of things that are really going right. So why don't we end with that, and we'll go from there.
I think it's awesome that you just asked me this question, because 12 minutes before I saw you today, a teacher in the Millard Public Schools called me and asked for a yard sign and wants to give me a donation.
Go.
And he goes, Mr. Swanson, which was hilarious to me because he's a teacher, and
I feel like I'm supposed to call you Mister.
Exactly. I won't identify him. But I'll just say that he goes, I need to let you know why it's so important that you win. He goes, yesterday in my class, I walked in and said, man, I love America. America's the greatest country on the face of the earth, the home of the brave and the land of the free. And he looked at his 9th grade class, and 50% of them scowled at him.
What?
Like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? America. What? They've been fed the Kool-Aid. I mean, they've drunk the Kool-Aid. They've heard nothing but this negative of America bashing. Well, America is not perfect, but America is an amazing story. And there are a lot of lessons to be learned. And I'm not just saying this to be over patriotic, but he was so moved that he literally picked up the phone and called me and said, I'm going to give you a check and I want a yard sign. And so it's the fundamental things that make America fantastic, make Millard wonderful, that it takes people like all of us to step up and wake up so that we don't lose to the folks that would dramatically change our schools so that we don't even recognize them. It's frankly one of the reasons why people move to Nebraska is for the schools. And I've heard that a lot as well.
Right. And it's the values.
It is the values.
Which they assume are passed down through the educational system.
Yep.
And if we want to keep attracting those people from the coasts, we have to keep that up. So I thank you for volunteering of your time and like truly like giving your heart into this. Like I've watched several times when, you know, you could have been chilling on a Saturday watching a football game. You're literally out there like walking for 10, 12 hours. So it's inspiring. And I just thank you for like doing this for my future kids and grandkids, because I know you'll probably still be there. So
my privilege. Thank you.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Spark to Fire. I'm your host, Landon Rhodes, and this is Sean Swanson. Really quick, we should probably should have inserted this earlier in the episode. Where can people find you to donate, to get involved? Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. People can go to Swanson4Millard.com, and that's the word for, F-O-R, not the number, Swanson4Millard.com. And the person I'm speaking to right now had a big to do with that website and your wife. So I appreciate that. But we lay out all of our values. We give people an opportunity to donate, to come on board. And it's also the ability to contact us if they have further questions. So thanks.
Yeah. And if you guys are in Millard, by the way, my wife and I live in Millard. So if you guys are in that area and you'd like to meet Sean, get involved, just let me know. Hit me up on Instagram. Just Landon R. Rhodes on Instagram. Hit me up and we will absolutely set up an introduction with Sean. And so for anybody else, make sure you go to that website. Every dollar counts. And what's funny, I look at how these campaigns are broken down. It's not a black box where like you don't really know what's going in. Every single cent is scrutinized over and used literally down to the penny, because mailing is expensive. Signs are expensive. T-shirts are expensive. And they're all things to get the word out for an unpaid position that literally pays nothing. But it's a very, very necessary part of campaigning. So my ask for you guys is if you care about our school system and you want to see more conversations like this happen instead of watching schools go the opposite direction, check out swansonformillard.com. And thank you guys for listening to the show. Please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts and a review. A written review always works the best. Make sure you tell a friend about us so they can get educated, make more money, have a better life. That's going to do it. Keep striking. Have a good day.